Sandamji, hello. Welcome to the stream. I thought about today we can, I have an idea of a topic, but I'm open to discussing other things if anybody's online and you want to suggest different topics. But my idea was today to explore the idea that meditating is stopping the mind. This is a concept that that was my initial idea when I first came into meditation. This is something that I heard about it, and I think there is a lot of misconceptions around the point, because there is something happening in the mind in relationship to meditation, and the outcome of the meditation can have an effect on the mind, but I don't think stopping the mind is meditating. I think there is a distinction between the two, but a good way to realize what the distinction is to actually learn to stop the mind. I think that can be an interesting thing to do. And it's actually not very difficult. There is a little exercise we will do today. We will do a few kind of meditations. And the first one to realize what's happening in the mind, and the second one to actually stop what's happening in the mind. But then to realize also that that state is not necessarily meditation. So we're gonna explore that. And one thing that comes to mind is when you read the Yoga Sutras from Patanjali, he talks about defining yoga as the yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, says when the chitta vritti stop. And chitta vritti, sometimes it may be understood like the thinking. Chitta vritti chitta is consciousness, chit, and vritti is movements or waves. Yeah. So chitta vritti nirodha would be when the consciousness waves cessate, stop. What does that mean? It means that whatever the consciousness is attached to is calming down. If you think of it like waves on the sea, so these waves are calming down and they are becoming flatter, let's say. Now, because the consciousness gets attached to the mind, the fluctuations of the consciousness become what the mind is thinking. So when we say about stopping the mind, if you stop the mind, that would mean that the consciousness is perceiving something that is still and is something quiet. However, consciousness can move from one place to another. I think a good experience is this is when we sit down to meditate and we close our eyes. And the consciousness is not only distracted by our thoughts, but we can be distracted by many things, like the discomfort of the clothes or the position of your legs. If the legs, maybe one leg is falling asleep, if you are sitting cross-legged, or if it's in the chair, maybe you feel the chair is a bit hard, then you hear some sounds around you, the sounds are distracting you. So those things are not necessarily the mind, but they are the consciousness that is fluctuating from one place to another. So according to the definition, yoga's chitta vritti nirodha would be that all these fluctuations are stopping. Why do they stop? Because the consciousness becomes focused in one pointed. So that doesn't mean that the mind is stopping. It's just that the consciousness is a different thing from the mind. Now, if we want to stop the thoughts, there is a learning that we can do. There is a process, and it can be useful and interesting, particularly if your thoughts are becoming your worst enemy, which is quite common, really, that most of the things that are negative around our lives are produced by the way we think about our life. So by being able to regulate what's happening in your mind, you would have a strong impact on how you feel immediately. So choosing to stop some kind of thoughts is particularly important and interesting, but not necessarily to enter into the state of meditation. So I want to try to make that distinction. But yes, let's start from there. Let's start from understanding our thoughts. We did a whole course on mind and we explore many concepts, but maybe I didn't go into this detail enough. So one of the first things that we learn when we come into yoga is that we have to have a direct relationship to the mind and notice what the mind is doing. Firstly, the mind is mainly distracted or disorganized and chaotic. And as we pay attention to it, many of the things that we think about are actually not useful. That's why in the title of the satsang I said stopping useless thoughts, not any thought, but useless ones. So one of the first things that we learn as we come into yoga is to listen to the mind, not to try to stop it, but to listen to it and determine, is that a useful or not thought? Is that thought useful or not? So this is a good exercise in general that we recommend, particularly for people who are learning meditation, they are starting meditation, to dedicate, let's start with 1 week, a whole week in which we observe our thoughts. And throughout the week, every time I remember about the exercise, I'm going to do it. So I'm going to be paying close attention to the mind and listening to what kind of thought do I have. Now, when you listen to a thought, there is a number of different kind of qualities of a thought. You can label it in many ways and you can classify them in many ways. For example, one way we could do it is, are you thinking something about the past? Thinking about the past, having memories and remembering something that happened. And it can be like just reliving that experience, but it can also be trying to correct things from the past in your imagination. So utilizing fantasy. So if she had done this, I would have done this other thing, and then she said this and I said that. And so trying to make up a story, changing the past of what happened to you, which is generally something that we do when we are dissatisfied with whatever happened in the past. And now the past is the past. We cannot go back to the past. We cannot change the past. We can reframe it. We can certainly rewrite our understanding of the past, and that's actually useful, particularly to heal wounds. However, just to relive the past and going again and again and thinking again about what happened and what I did and what I didn't do, that's not useful. That's just a way to get trapped into our minds. So recognizing these kind of thoughts are useful, to recognize that we are going into this past, because our past experiences are what creates our relationship to what's going to come next. So what's going to come next is the future. And so we can be thinking about the past, we can be thinking about the future. And when we think about the future, it's generally a projection of the past. It's generally like imagining what can happen, what could happen based on your past experiences, obviously. But it's generally these projections and they are also fantasies, and they are just not right. They are just not what's going to happen. It's just our fantasy. And most of the time we will going to be projecting in a way that we explore our fears, fear about the future, fear about what's coming. So we may have some things from the past that we experienced and they were painful, and then we are afraid that these things are going to come again. And so we live our life trying to avoid that thing to repeat. So we are in the mind exploring what kind of things may happen, and they could be painful. So I'm going to try not to go into that. And actually, again, the reality is not that. Reality is different from our fantasy. And we could be imagining something that could go wrong, and actually nothing goes wrong. But you spend 2 hours worrying about that, or 2 days, or 5 days, or even worse. By thinking that something could go wrong, you can actually create that thing that can go wrong. So a clear example, it would be you spend a whole week preparing for some exam, and you're studying very hard, but you're afraid that you're going to fail, and all the consequences that may entail. It may be a lot of things that could be linked to you failing that exam. So it's a very important exam. So you spend the whole week worrying. But that worrying, it takes a lot of energy, mental energy, which could be utilized otherwise to study what you have to study. But rather than studying, you spend it worrying. So you're studying, but you are like thinking, oh, I'm not going to remember this. So you make notes. How will I remember the notes? And too much energy goes into this worrying. Then you spend the nights getting ready for the exam. You are very nervous. You don't sleep well. Then the night before the exam, you are so nervous. It's very difficult to go to sleep. Next morning, you wake up and you are exhausted already. And now you have to go to the exam. Well, you can imagine how the result of that exam can go very much in line with what you feared, the fearing of the failing of the exam. So fear of something happening actually may create the thing that we are afraid of. So is that fear useful? No, it is not. I'm not saying that fear is useless. I'm not saying that we should live unafraid of anything. There is a way to manage or even utilize fear for our own benefit. And fear is necessary. If you're afraid to jump out of a window, you're not going to do it. So that fear is going to satisfy basic survival needs. However, there is a lot of fear that is baseless, or let's say is based on some imperfect understanding of whatever happened in your past, and then you project it into the future and you're afraid of that. So those kind of projections, that's useless as well. So going into the past and reliving the experience, trying to modify it, that's useless. Reliving the experience just to punish yourself for whatever happened, that's useless. The guilt and the shame and the regret, whatever, that's useless. That's our mind games. Going into the future and projecting an idea with a fantasy and being afraid of what you're projecting and then getting scared for that and not making decisions out of that fear, that's also not useful. And so that's the past, that's the future. Then there's the third, which is thinking about the present, thinking about what's happening. And so the third type of thoughts about this classification that I'm using, we could use many other classifications. If something is happening in the present, we often think that we often think that we need to think about what we are going to do and say. But the reality is, when we are in a situation and you are in front of the situation, you just know what you have to do or know what you have to say without having to think what you're going to do and what you're going to say. So if we are in a particular moment, something is happening, I have to act. Very, very often, we just know what we have to do. We don't have to reflect upon it and consider all the options and calculate and plan and project. We can just do what we have to do. We don't think about it. We just do it. If there is a little bee that falls in a little bit of water and it's kind of trying to survive, and maybe you see the bee and your instinct is just to pick up the bee and get it out of the water. If you stop to think, oh, maybe the bee is going to sting myself if I try to remove it, it's going to hurt me, why maybe I shouldn't touch it, but it's dying, should I do it, should I not? If I let it die, is it karma? But if I pick it up, is it karma as well? Because maybe it's the karma of the bee to die. You see, if you are going into this whole stream of thoughts, then the bee is dead already. There's nothing to decide anymore. So instinctively, you see that, you pick up the bee flies away, and that's it. There's no big issue, there's no big thinking about it, you just do it. The same way, and well, this seems very simple. We think it's more complicated when we are, for example, writing an email, but it's not that different actually, even though it's much more a cognitive, intellectual effort that we have to do when we write an email. Actually, we can spend hours thinking about what am I going to say to the person, and you rewrite in your head the email. Then the moment that you sit down to write, suddenly something else comes out if you are in tune with yourself. And then just something comes out, and that's it. That's what you had to say. And all those hours of worrying about what you would say might be unnecessary, so useless as well. So if you're living in the present with your consciousness awake and aware, ready for what's coming, you may be more in tune to what has to be said rather than what you think has to be said. So you're just there, there's an email to be written, you open the email, you reply it in the moment, and then you are like saying what you have to say, but not really thinking about it, which is kind of funny because we often say, well, think before you do things, right? Not to create karma. And yes and no, because if you think too much, that could be the karma that you are creating. So what I'm suggesting is that sometimes you just can do things, you can even say things, but coming out of your consciousness. I'm not saying not think about it and act subconsciously, because then that's definitely karmic and reactive. But what I'm saying is sometimes if you can just tuning into your awareness and your consciousness, and then something has to be said, you can just know what you have to say, and then you say it, rather than think about it and then saying it, which would come from the mind. So hopefully that distinction is clear. So this would be an example of classification of thoughts about the past, the future, and the present. That would be one classification. You could classify thoughts in many ways. But the most basic way to classify thoughts is this basic thing. Is it useful or is it not useful? And let's give a few examples of that. You're coming out of your house, you're picking your bag and you're leaving the door, and then you think, I think I left the fire on. I was boiling water for my tea and I think I left the fire on. And then you remember, well, that's a useful thought, isn't it? So you come back and you close the fire. Or you are preparing for a business trip, and then you packed your bag, and then you're doing other things. You fly tomorrow, and then when you're outside your home, you remember, I forgot to put the passport in the bag. Now, that's a useful thought. So those thoughts we don't want to get rid of. Useless would be to worry, what if the bag has a hole? Imagine that it has a hole and the passport goes away. Or what if I go into the airport and somebody steals my passport, and then what would I do? I would be late for the trip, and then if I'm late for the trip, you see, we start going into this imagination, which is just damaging. No, that's useless, right? Thinking, I forgot to put the passport in my suitcase, that's useful. So useful thoughts are something that we want to nurture. That's how the mind can help us. Satnam Infinite Stories, hello. As a child, I was told often to think before I speak. It has stuck with me, but I still catch myself speaking and then wishing I thought more about what I said. Well, that's the thing. I think there is like 3 different levels. There is like when you are unconscious and you speak from the subconscious and you don't even know that you are speaking from the subconscious. So everything you say is just karmic, right? It's just creating a mess with other people. Then you realize this, and then you correct that by applying your mind with consciousness, thinking, what am I going to say? And then you say it, right? So you are becoming conscious of your tendency to say things blah, 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 coming out of the subconscious. You become conscious of that. So you start thinking about what you want to say. And then we develop that. And then the third level is you just are conscious. You're not from the subconscious. You just consciously, you are with a person and you just know what you have to say and you just say it without thinking, am I going to say that? How are they going to receive it? You just consciously pick it up and just sense whether you can say something or not. So I think there is these 3 different levels, and some part of it will be a little bit like driving a car. Imagine the first time you learn how to drive a car. I don't know where you live, but in Spain, most cars you have to use the clutch to change the gears. This is manual driving, it's not automatic. So you would have to learn, okay, so how do I do this? And the first time you do it, you don't know how to do it, so you mess up and you press the pedal that is not, and then you're accelerating when you haven't released the clutch, and the engine is like, and you're like, what am I doing? So in life is a little bit like that. We speak, it comes out in a way that we don't really know what to say, and then we mess up. Now, then somebody's teaching you how to use the clutch and how to change the gears. And then, okay, so this is how to do it. Okay, so I clutch and then release. And you do it enough, then now you know how to do it. So you consciously control, and that would be your mind, thinking, before I speak, thinking how to use the pedals. And eventually this becomes so natural that at some point they tell you, okay, just go this way, and then you turn the wheel, you're going in that direction, you didn't even notice that you changed the gear, and that happened automatically. Now, having something operating from the subconscious is not bad. Like this automatic driving would be operating naturally from the subconscious. But this is a little bit like, am I going to say something? Well, sometimes we have to ask ourselves, how are they going to receive it? Are they ready to receive these words? Should I say these words or am I going to mess up? And if you develop this sensitivity, that can go into the subconscious. I don't have to check myself whether they're going to receive it well or not. It's going to be automatic in a way. I can already know whether I can say something or not. And even more, I can just be present for the experience of being with this person with my empathy and my sensitivity. I'm just connected to the person and I just know what I have to say. And that's an intuitive knowing. That's not planned and organized. Yeah. So there is 3 levels, I think. And yes, children need to learn the first level to make it controlled, and then going beyond that. I would say that it can go that way. So let's go to this idea that I forgot my passport, I should put it in the suitcase. Now that's a kind of useful thought. However, if I spend the whole day that I'm outside thinking, the passport, it's going to be a mess. I'm going to spend the whole day burning energy thinking about the passport. And sometimes when we think about one thing too much, it just disappears from the mind and then we forget. Then when we get home, it will just be gone. So the first time that the thought comes into the mind, that's useful. The 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th time that the thought comes into the mind, that's not useful. So what could we do then? Well, if we detect a thought that is useful, like I didn't put my passport in the suitcase, you can set up an alarm in your phone at an hour that you know that you're going to be at home, and passport into suitcase. Then, okay, when the alarm rings, the passport is going to go into the suitcase. That's it. Now, from the moment that I set up the alarm until the moment when I go home and I actually do it, any time that the mind thinks about that again, that's useless. So some thoughts are useful, 90-something% are not. But when those thoughts are useful, you take note on those and you write it down. After that, they become useless again. So we realize that with that, a great percentage of the thoughts that we are thinking about are actually useless. So, okay, let's say we think useless things and we want to stop them. All right, should we try a few exercises to realize this? So what I would first recommend is to actually spend a few weeks to do the exercise all throughout the day. Anytime you remember, any thought that comes into the mind, to label it. Is it useful or is it useless? And that's a good exercise to train ourselves to be aware of the mind, which means separating the mind from the consciousness, because you are aware of the mind. So separating consciousness from mind, and now I am observing the mind. The mind is the object and I am the observer. And that's already going to create the right relationship for meditation to occur. But this first relationship has to be done. There is this joke kind of in yoga. A person goes to a guru, one of these gurus, and asks, "So guru, what do I have to do to meditate? How do I meditate?" And he says, "Oh, very simple. You go home and you put your timer, 10 minutes, and all you have to do in these 10 minutes is not think of monkeys. That's all." So the person, "That's it? Yeah, 10 minutes every day. Okay, see you next week." So the guy goes home and then puts 10 minutes in the timer. Okay, I should not think of monkeys. Okay, no monkeys, no monkeys. Okay, no monkeys. How do I meditate? No monkeys. That's all I have to do. It's like baboons, chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, all monkeys into the consciousness. It's like, how can I do this, right? So he will go back to the teacher. "It's impossible. I never think of monkeys, but suddenly I sit to meditate and my mind is filled with monkeys," no? Which is it's a nice joke, but it reflects very well how the mind is like that, like a monkey in a way. My father's yoga teacher, I was 40 odd years ago. He taught him that the mind is like a crazy drunk monkey, like a monkey that is crazy and it's drunk and it's jumping from tree to tree and here and there and ducking and then going up the tree and kind of like that. So I think that's an interesting image. So let's try this for a moment. I recommend to do this exercise prior to this session, but anyway, let's just do this for a moment. Let's close your eyes, see if you can. You're not driving or anything. Just close your eyes. Excuse me. And have a first contact with your mind. Just listen to your mind. And rather than trying to stop the mind, for the moment, allow any thought that comes. And really allow it. Listen to it. And as you are listening, all you have to do is to determine, is it a useful or is it a useless thought? But even if it's useful or useless, you just put the label and let it go. Just keep the thought there and let it become another thought. You can say to your mind, come on, what do you have to think today? Tell me, what do you want to say to me? Just be ready for it. It may happen that you get distracted and you are away with your thoughts and you forgot to do the exercise and you forgot that you were trying to observe the mind. You went away with what the mind was saying and you forgot about it. So if you notice that you went away with your mind, the moment that you notice, it's okay. Don't punish yourself. Don't feel guilty or anything. Just bring your awareness back to the exercise. Go back from your consciousness. Look at your mind and say, okay, what do you have to say to me today? You're always thinking what you want. I'm going to let you think whatever you want to think. Just tell me, what do you want to say to me now? Okay, I think it's enough for the moment. Open your eyes if you had them closed. Oh, how was the experience? If you were doing it and you are right here, you can write in the comments or you can write in the chat or in the comments of the YouTube video if you are watching it recorded. Let me know how this first exercise was. Most often when I teach this exercise in the trainings for to learn how to meditate, the feedback is often that it's quite curious that the moment that we want to listen to the mind hides away. It's like it's very shy. It's a shy monkey. Somehow, the mind is always thinking, and yet the moment we say to the mind, okay, go, talk to me, then suddenly the mind doesn't know what to say. So that's one of the experiences that is quite often. Is like that. It could be interesting. It says, I need to eat breakfast, and there were many thoughts of what to do today, a lot of planning. Yes, that's another thing. Yeah, then you can explore, are they necessary? Are they useful thoughts or not useful thoughts? So the moment that we detect the thoughts, yeah, sometimes the first experience is often like mind is hiding. Then the mind engages. Now, when the mind engages, it can happen that because the consciousness is generally linked to the mind, then we go with the consciousness linked to the mind and we go into the thoughts and we forget that we are meditating. Let's call this meditating, more or less. It's not really, but okay. And so we forget about it. And then at some point wait, I was thinking about what do I have to buy for the breakfast. And then I was like, I need to go back to the exercise. I'm doing the exercise on leveling the mind. So that's another thing. We go away and when we come back. Now, when we come back, we can say, well, that thought that took me away, was that useful or not? So that's part of the exercise. Now, another thing that you can do is if you notice that you went away with the thought and you lost your consciousness, you forgot the exercise when you were going, a useful thing would be to track back where did you lose the consciousness. So I was thinking about buying something. Okay, where did that come from? Oh, because I was thinking about planning what I'm going to do today. Okay, where does that come from? Oh, it comes from because I was having breakfast. Okay, so where does that come from? So that you check back, why didn't I catch the thought when it was like, I need to have breakfast? Why couldn't I catch it there? And I had to wait until it was already planning the end, right? So this is something that we can develop. This tracking back to the origin of the thought is useful to teach consciousness to stay awake. That's another thing. Another element is when you can identify whether a thought is useful or not, when it's not useful, one exercise that my mantra teacher, Mas Murray over there, would teach me would be to, have you seen this? There's a table, there's some glasses on top, and there is like a napkin or something underneath, and then you pull away from the napkin, and the glasses just fall straight, yeah? He said, well, take your thoughts and pull the rug from under them. So let the thoughts fall down and disappear. So doing this exercise, you would be just aware, ready for the thoughts to come. If a thought comes, is it useful or not? It's not useful, pull away from the rug, right? So that's not a useful thought right now. I'm not shopping. Right now I'm meditating. I don't need to shop. I don't need to do the shopping. Useless. Pull the rug, let it go away. If it's useful, I forgot to put the passport in my suitcase. Now, that's very important. Okay, you stop, put it there, write it down, and that's it. You don't have to think about it anymore. Don't spend the next 10 minutes of the meditation thinking, when I come out of meditation, I have to remember to put the passport in the suitcase, right? Because that's useless. It's better to do it and then come back if it's such a useful thought. That's why before we had mobile phones, we would recommend to always have a little notebook with you and then a little pen and always write down the ideas that were useful to explore when you go home. And then when you go home, you take the notebook and you check what it was written. Nowadays, we have mobile phones, so you can just write a note for yourself in the mobile phone. So that's a useful thing. Okay, what next? Where do we go from here? Well, let's go back to this first idea that the monkey becomes shy. Okay, if you go and say to the mind, what do you have to say to me? And you listen to it, generally the mind wants to hides away. So that's because consciousness, pure consciousness, is very strong. It can change whatever is happening. It can alter whatever is happening in your experience. So we want to focus the consciousness in that particular way. And if we are having trouble dealing with the mind, we need to focus it to the mind, not focus it on something that is going to distract the mind and then we're going to go away with the mind, but focus it on the mind. So this is an exercise, an interesting exercise. Now there's a number of things that we can do here. We can do the exploring a thought when it's useless. We can put the rag away out from it. That would be an example. Now, a little story that I will share here. I went to, when I was with Masmari, I went to India for 2 months. And he was doing some sort of a pilgrimage. He was preparing a trip for his European students, and he would do kind of a pilgrimage among like 3 different kinds of ashrams. And they were going to stay like 2.5 weeks, something like that. And we were going to move around India. But before the whole group came, we went together, him and I, and there was 2 more people, and we were organizing the trip, so making sure the taxis were booked and the buses and everything. Now, I was there just to help whenever he needed help. So I had nothing to do apart from that. And that was before, mobile phone would be in the back, right? So it was no social media, no anything, just 2 months of just being there, just serving whenever I was needed. Now, because I didn't have to do anything, I didn't have to go to work, I didn't have to talk to anyone particularly, then I decided that I would dedicate this trip to stop the mind. So I would spend any second that I could, any time that I could remember to do the exercise, I would spend the moment doing this exercise of, is the thought useful or not? Is it not useful? Pull the rug from under it. And I became quite good at it. After even just 1 month of doing it, I have to think 1 month, every day I had nothing else to do. So I was just, when I wasn't interacting with him or the other 2 people that were in the trip, I was just pulling the rug away from the thoughts. So I remember after, more or less like a month, we were in Ramana Maharshi, my guru, in near his the mountain where he lived in an ashram. We were there in the ashram, and I was sitting looking at the Arunachala, the sacred mountain, and I was just doing the exercise, pulling the rug from under thoughts. And at some point, there was no more thoughts. Mind stopped, and it became completely empty. To the point that I wasn't even saying, oh, look, my mind is empty, because that would be a thought, right? So it was not even that thought, which sometimes the mind tricks you in that way. You are thinking, look, I'm not thinking. Look at how calm is my mind today. Wow, my calm is so cool. Sometimes the mind tricks you in that way, and you get attached to that again, and then you go back with the mind. But this time, there was nothing. There was no thoughts. I was aware, I was conscious, I was awake, I was waiting there, and nothing was happening. A butterfly. I don't even have to think about the butterfly, I just see the butterfly going. Nothing, right? And this went on for around 20 minutes. So for these 20 minutes, I was in this empty mind state, completely empty. And then afterwards, I would go back to this exercise and think about the experience of 20 minutes with no mind. And look, on one side is like wonderful, because the mind is generally so negative and so troubling, that just not having those kind of thoughts is wonderful. On the other hand, I was like, but I thought that if the mind stopped, I would get enlightened or something. I thought that there would be some kind of beautiful, exciting, ecstatic experience of bliss, or some samadhi kind of state, something would happen. And it didn't. And it was like so surprising. It was like 20 minutes, no mind. So where is samadhi? Right? I wasn't saying that. When I was in the experience, I was just in the experience. But then afterwards, like, something doesn't add up. If meditation is about stopping the mind, I should feel joy inside and peaceful inside. And well, it's relatively peaceful because, I'm kind of on holidays here. I don't have anything to do. I'm in a beautiful spot. And it was peaceful, but there was no click. There was no that thing happening. Well, it took me a while to understand this. What I understand now is that you can stop the mind, but that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that there's going to be some grace that is going to come down from the sky and is going to pull you to heaven or something. The mind is the mind. Stopping the mind doesn't necessarily mean samadhi. And the meditative state is a different thing. Now, because I was doing an exercise to stop the mind, I was meditating and I was very much aware, but that doesn't guarantee anything. Just stopping the mind is not a guarantee to get to anywhere. So that was an interesting realization and also a little bit disappointing. I have to confess. I was hoping that I would, do a big spiritual progress through my effort and my will, and it didn't happen like that. So that was a good humility lesson. Okay, now after years, I've learned that stopping the mind is much easier than that. And I'm going to show you right now, we're going to do an exercise on how to stop the mind willingly. And we're going to use a lot of prana to do this, so there has to be some effort in that, but it's actually a very simple exercise. 1 second. Infinite Study says, when my mind is empty, I usually see the swirling colors of green and purple. I just observe and enjoy, but place no thought on it. All right. Well, okay. Like sometimes there's colors, sometimes there's sounds, sometimes there's other kind of experiences, but they are, no thought on it. I mean, it's just, what do I have to do with colors? I don't have to do anything with colors. Also, colors are associated to to vision, and vision is very much linked to the mind. So seeing colors would very easily trigger the mind to go into a fantasy, which doesn't mean to be speaking a fantasy, because thoughts can be just images. This is something important to realize, that when I talk about thoughts, I don't mean words. That's also images, right? So no images, no thoughts. No images, no words. That would be the concept of the thoughts. But yes, sometimes as we are driving along the path of meditation, we will see some landscape. There will be, oh, look, some green and purple. Wahuru, I'm not going there. I'm going here, right? So maybe colors appear. Wahuru. Maybe there's sounds appear. Wahuru. This is where I'm going. So that's important to say. But let's do this exercise, okay? How to stop the mind. Now, we're going to do this. Imagine your mind like a stream of thoughts. Like I don't know if it happens anymore. Sometimes when you watch the news, the bad news, there is some words passing by in the bottom of the screen. They are like passing by like that, like a tape with some letters. Sometimes they give additional news or exclusive stories, like right now what's happening, or maybe they tell you how how Wall Street is doing with some shares of whatever. They are appearing here in the lower bottom of the screen. Well, imagine the mind being like that, like a tape is coming out of your mind, and there is this stream of thoughts flowing out, like a tape, like a little strip of paper that is flowing out of your mind with the thoughts. Now, what we are going to do in this next exercise is we're going to allow the mind to think, which initially is going to create the shy monkey mind. So initially the mind is going to want to be shy, but then as the mind comes into any kind of thought, maybe you are thinking about I need to go buying groceries for my breakfast or whatever you have to think about. As the thought comes out, we're going to be in this posture. So we're going to extend the index finger, possibly of the right hand. It doesn't matter really much. You could do it with the left hand as well. Use your dominant hand, let's say. And then imagine that the finger is on top of this tape. So you will allow the thoughts to pass. And at the moment that a thought is manifesting, you poke. You do like this with the finger. Yeah, you move it forward and you tap on the tape. And you press the tape so that the thoughts don't flow. And then you stop the thoughts right there. So you're going to use the power of your will, and you're going to put some prana into this with it's called the pranic finger, yeah? And you're going to use your inner will to stop the flow of thoughts. Let's try this. Okay, so close your eyes again if you can. And extend the index finger of your dominant hand. Almost like if you were going to ask a question, yeah? And again, tell your mind, okay, I'm ready for it. Tell me what you want to think. And at the beginning, it may be shy, but the moment that the mind starts thinking something and you realize, see the thoughts like a stream of paper coming out, and then you press down with your finger and stop the thought right there. Then when it's appropriate, you lift the finger and let the mind change. We will do this for a few minutes. Remember that thoughts are both images as well as words. Maybe it's an image that is passing. Like instead of a tape with words, maybe you see like a little movie. And when you press with the finger, you apply your will to stop the thought. You stop the word right there, right when you press with the finger. And then you let it go, but the thought will probably have gone away already. And you're ready for the next. Inhale deep. And exhale, you can open your eyes. How was your experience? This is the kind of exercises I don't do too much here in the YouTube channel because I would like to listen to how it went for you, for me to give feedback and to advance into the next exercise. And it's difficult to do when it's only a few of us here online. But I hope you had a good experience and realize that it's actually not so difficult to stop the thought. It just requires a lot of effort on your part to stop that kind of thought. But it's similar to a video that we did a few weeks ago when I was saying just stop holding, stop holding to the mind games. When we were exploring how to get rid of mind games, it's just don't catch them. So this stopping the tape is similar to this letting go of the mind game. Don't get attached to it. So that's an interesting exercise. And look, I'm not saying, I said before that stopping the mind is not meditating necessarily. That doesn't mean that it's not useful. If you have a troubling mind, if the mind is giving you a hard time, it's difficult to fall asleep, if you are worrying too much, then do the exercise. And it's like you can find that doing this finger thing, the thing with the finger, is more than symbolic. It's actually useful to block that flow of thoughts. So you put the finger around the same height as the head, to be able to stop that tape flowing around. Hopefully that's useful. I will show another one, another kind of little meditation that I like to do. I think this one is different. It's not with the finger. It's not so much about just stopping the thoughts, but it's about entering into the space of void, but with consciousness. So entering into the void, but with consciousness. And I think it's a very peaceful meditation. It's a very simple meditation, so I'm going to guide it as well. And if you can close your eyes, so close your eyes. I'll guide it. So become aware of your breath. Don't worry about the mind now. Don't worry about the thoughts. Just pay attention to your breath and notice how the breath comes in and comes out. And there is a natural breathing in and a natural breathing out. Don't force it and don't try to control it. We're not going to control the breath consciously. We are not going to make any effort to control the breath. Just be aware of it and notice how there is a little space, a little gap at the end of the inhale before the body starts exhaling again. And there is a tiny gap at the end of the exhale before the body starts inhaling again. So pay attention to that space between breathing in and breathing out, and between breathing out and breathing in. Pay close attention to the feeling in that space. And naturally allow it to grow, but don't control your breath. Just allow that space of emptiness between the inhale and the exhale to open up naturally. It's important that you don't apply your mind to what you're doing. So you don't decide to inhale. You don't decide to exhale. Just noticing what happens in the body. The body naturally will inhale when it needs to inhale. Let it come as a surprise almost. Like you are resting in the peacefulness of the holding the breath in or out, and suddenly the breath in comes in or the breath out comes in, and it's almost like a surprise that it comes. Inhale deep. And exhale. I hope you had a good experience. Sometimes when you are doing this exercise, after the one that we did before, you may notice that the mind comes in. You were inhaling or you were exhaling, and suddenly the mind comes in with a thought. And you're like, whoa, okay, mind is thinking something. Is it useful? No. Okay, let it go, right? So you start to apply the previous exercise of labeling thoughts as useful or not useful and just letting them go. So that's the other exercise. And catching the breath and linking the breath to the consciousness to the breath, it's a very useful way to step a little bit away from the mind, because the breath is the most important link between body, mind, spirit. And even, to breathe in, we say inspire. So inspiring. So it's like getting the spirit inside. So it's something spiritual about it. And it's a very physical thing. So by allowing the moment when the breath is still and allowing that moment to extend, with the breath, the thoughts also become still. And then by you becoming aware of that stillness, that's the chitta vritti that we mentioned at the beginning when Patanjali talks about chitta vritti nirodha, when the waves of consciousness calm down. So by, wave is up and down, is in and out, just like the breathing. Breathing is like waves. So by, in the breath, perceiving the moment when it stops, that's a little moment of chitta vritti. And then coming down. Satnam, John, hello, welcome. You come at the very end. We are almost ready to finish, I think. But did you manage to be here for the experiment of inhaling and not holding the breath, but noticing the space between the breathing in and the breathing out? I don't know if you were here, but I hope you catched it. Yeah, it's a good exercise. Well, okay, so any question and any comment you can write in the chat. Let me just summarize then what we were talking about today, that stopping the mind does not mean that's not meditation necessarily. When you meditate, when you are in a state of meditation, a side effect may be that the mind is calm, right? But it's not the objective of meditation, nor is it a synonymous of the exercise you have to do to get to that state of meditation. So it's good to differentiate those. Remember that meditation is about awareness. Awareness and mind are very much linked. So anything that is going to be separating both are going to be useful. So the exercise of labeling thoughts as useful or not useful, and when they are not useful, letting them go, that can be a part of a process to get into the meditative state. So something that I would often do when I sit to meditate is first check, how is my body? Is my body comfortable? Is there some distraction in the body? Can I adjust anything I need to adjust to let it be calm? Okay, it's finished. How is my mind? Is my mind comfortable? Is there some thought that is asking me for attention? Is that a useful thought? Do I have to write something down? No? Okay, let it go. How is my breath? Go into my breath, and then I start meditating. So this is a little inner check-in to make sure that you are in the optimum state for meditation. You just arrived, we'll catch up later. Yeah, okay, you have the recording there in the channel, John, no problem. So that's it for me for today. I hope it was useful. If it was useful for you, if you enjoyed some of this and you would like to give it a like, then you hit it on the way out, and that's good for the channel. Thank you, useful and enjoyable as always. Thank you, Infinite Stories. Good to have you here as usual. And Satnam, there's more people now. Nyana Sabharwal. I'm not sure how I'm probably butchering your name. That's such a nice name. Nyana Sabharwal. Where are you from? That sounds very interesting. Exotic. It sounds exotic to me. I wonder what culture is the name from. But yes, thank you very much, everyone, for being here and for doing the practices. I hope the little meditations were useful. And by the way, I'm going to do a special session in 2 weeks' time on Tuesday, the 28th. We're going to be talking about death and what is beyond the tunnel. That's going to be the topic for the 28th. And I've been talking about death a little bit here and there, and I said that I would do a specific video for that because it's a very important topic, and the time has come. So if you are interested to know more about death and dying and the beyond, don't miss it on the 28th at the same time as usual. Thank you very much. Satnam, everyone.